Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kate, and on this channel we talk about books and all things bookish. So welcome. Today what we're gonna do is we're going to be talking about my December reads. On the day that I'm filming this is December 31st. It is New Year's Eve. And so I've officially, I think, finished all the books I'm gonna be finishing this month. I am in the middle of a couple, but I don't think I'm gonna be finishing either of those today. We're gonna go through, I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books this month. So it was a pretty normal month for me. It was a month where there was a lot of kind of mid books. There weren't a ton of bad books, but there also weren't a ton of good books. I gave it a lot of 3 and 4 star ratings this month. So unfortunately not a lot of memorable books, but still I'm happy that I read the books that I did. The first book that I read this month was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. Unless you've been living under a rock, you likely know what this book is. This is the second book in the Fourth Wing series. I think it's called the Empyrean series or something like that. Basically, this series centers around our main character, Violet, as she lives in this fantasy world, and she gets sent to what's called a rider's college, where she's training to become a dragon rider who would then protect their continent that they live on. But her whole life she was actually training to be a scribe. So in the first book you kind of walk through her journey in that regard, and then this book is the follow-up to that. The first book, I think everybody and their dog rated it 5 stars. I actually was not as sold on that book as a lot of people were. I think I gave it like a 4, 4.5, something in that realm. I had really high expectations going into it, and then they weren't really met. I didn't feel the feelings that I saw that other people were feeling. Unfortunately, I really wanted to, and romantasy is my favorite genre, so I really thought I would like it. This book though, I've been seeing a lot of really low ratings on this book. A lot of people saying that it was published too quickly, that it wasn't edited properly. I think this is not a popular opinion. I think I might have liked this book more than Fourth Wing. I found the politics a little bit more interesting in this. There was a little bit less romance, and some of the feelings towards the characters, like kind of the decisions I guess that they made and the way that people were communicating were a little bit frustrating. But I think it was kind of more exciting to me what was actually happening in this book. My one big gripe is how big this book is. This book is over 600 pages, just barely over 600 pages, and it felt like it was 1,000 pages long. I've seen videos talking about the actual word count of this book, and I think it is actually, like, if you compared it to most normal novels, it would be around 900 pages, and it really felt it. Like, these pages are really dense, the font is really small, and it's not a lot of like dialogue, it's just a lot of text on these pages. So it took me about a week and a half to read this, which is not common for me when it comes to books. Usually if I'm really enjoying a book, I'll read it really quickly. So I think that a lot of this likely could have been cut out, and we would have had a good story still, maybe even a better story if it was edited a little bit more. But I'm still excited to see where this goes. The ending was really crazy, and I don't know where the story is going to go from there. I would recommend this book. I would recommend Fourth Wing and this one. I'm not a big fan. Like, I'm not one of those diehard people for either of them, but I do think I like this one a little bit more. I ended up settling on a 4 star for this book. So really pleased with it, but definitely not a perfect book. The second book that I read in December is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This is the final book that I had to read of Abby's. I have now read both of her different types of series that she's written. This is for her series that came out prior to Part of Your World and Yours Truly, which I think are her most popular books. And it is set in the same universe, but this is kind of totally separated off of the other 2 interconnected standalones. This is the 3rd book of 3 interconnected standalones. I hope that all just made sense what I said. I'm not sure if it did, but just roll with it. We're gonna pretend that it did. This one centers around our 2 main characters. We have Vanessa and I'm so bad with names. What is his name? It's her neighbor, Adrian. So we have Vanessa and Adrian and they're neighbors, and they have a bit of a run-in and things go from there. So Vanessa is taking care of a newborn child and she's kind of going through all the struggles of that. It's not her child. I won't tell you whose it is, but it's not hers. And Adrian kind of comes as this helping hand for her in her time of need when taking care of this child. He is a really, really sweet human. I really liked both of the characters, both Vanessa and Adrian. I think that out of all of Abby's books, this is probably my least favorite. I gave it a 3 stars in the end. I did enjoy it. I just didn't think that it was a book that I would necessarily reread in the future, or that really left me thinking about it after I finished reading it. I think I put it down and then immediately moved on to my next book. Would recommend though all of her books. They are all very quick reads, light reads. They all tend to have a bit of a deeper underlying plot to them as well. So if you're looking for something that you could just easily dive into, any of her books are great. I do recommend reading all of her standalones in order of the series that they are in. So even though they are all interconnected standalones, this being the 3rd of the Friend Zone series, I would read 1, 2, 3, and then the Part of Your World series, I'd read Part of Your World and then Yours Truly. Otherwise you are going to spoil things. You don't have to. They're completely standalone, but you will spoil things. So that was book 2. Now book number 3, I don't have in person because I read it on my Kindle this month, and that was Scarred by Emily McIntyre. I believe it's the 2nd book in the Never After series that she has written. I did read Hooked previously, and I thought that Hooked was okay. This one I did not like as much as Hooked. I actually gave it a 2 stars at the end of the day, which really, you know, I do feel bad giving books poor ratings, but sometimes books just don't hit for me. I know there's a lot of people that absolutely adore all of those books. When I kind of sit down and think about it, I don't have a lot of positive feelings towards that book. I didn't feel like the characters were anybody that I would connect with. They weren't very fleshed out. I felt like they were kind of flat, and I found the romance itself wasn't super believable when I was reading the book. So because of that, I did land on the 2 stars. I think if you like dark romances, you would probably like this series. Like I said, a lot of people have so many good things to say about this series. I think for myself, I won't be continuing after this book because I know that Hooked and Scarred, from what I hear, are some of the favorites of the series, and because I didn't love those, I don't think moving forward that I would appreciate the other ones. Unfortunately, 2 stars for Scarred. Book number 4 of the month, I read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. This book is the 2nd in the Magnolia Parks universe series. There's Magnolia Parks, Daisy Hates, and then there's a 2nd Magnolia Parks and a 2nd Daisy Hates book, but you should really read them in the order, I suppose. So far I've only read up to this book. I have such mixed feelings about this series. I definitely think that this series is not for everybody. I think you need to be a particular kind of a reader to really appreciate these books. I find a lot of people either really, really love these books or they really, really dislike these books. I kind of find myself in the minority here of being kind of I like them, don't love them. But I do hear that the 3rd and the 4th books are the best, so I am holding out to read those ones before I make any final decisions. This book centers around our main character, Daisy, and she is part of this big crime family with her brother. They steal art paintings and art type things and then make a ton of money off of them. Because that is so illegal, there's violence and things like that as well that does come into play because of that. There's not a lot of plot in these books, and I think that's something that I have to kind of look past because I like a good mix of plot-driven books and character-driven books. And this one it's so far both Magnolia Parks and this are very character-driven. They both have a lot of fairly what I would call toxic relationships in them, where you're not going to be reading this book and being happy. You're not going to be reading this book and being kicking your feet. You're going to just be a little bit frustrated and not necessarily know where things are going all of the time. I did land on 4 stars for this one. It's a bit of a hesitant 4 stars. I think it'd be between 3.5 and 4 stars. And I don't quite know what I would classify this book as either. You find it in the romance section at the store. So I suppose it is a romance, and it definitely does have romance in it. But that being said, it's kind of just like a fiction as well, because it's, I don't know how to explain it. And this is what I mean when I say it just leaves me feeling like kind of weird. Like I don't know how I feel towards this book. But I think that if you really like rich people drama, toxic relationships, you're not looking for a lot of plot, I think that you would really enjoy this. I found it took me a while to read this book as well, whereas it is quite long. It's almost 500 pages, which is quite long for what would be classified as a romance, and it felt thick. It felt like it took me a long time to read, but her words are quite lyrical. I think if you actually take the time to read word for word in this book, which is not, I don't always do that. You know, sometimes I'm skimming sections, but I find in this book, I could eventually go back, reread these, and I would find a lot of things to highlight as I was reading them, because there is some really good word choices and lyrical choices that are made throughout this book. So I do appreciate that. She also does do these things where she puts footnotes in at the bottom. So you have kind of your whole scene playing out, and these at the bottom will be kind of like clarifying comments that are made, or like inner dialogue that maybe doesn't make it up into the page. That's kind of fun, but I do find that definitely slows down my reading as well, because I'm jumping up and down, and that happens pretty frequently throughout the book. So just know that going in. Book number 5 that I read this month is Powerless by Elsie Silver. This is book number 3 in the Chestnut Springs series. This centers around our two characters, Sloane and Jasper. Jasper is a professional hockey player and Sloane is a professional ballerina. They are long-term friends turned lovers in this book. So if those are tropes that you like, definitely would recommend this. I think that this was my least favorite in the Chestnut Springs series so far. I think right now my order goes book number 2, which was Heartless is first, and then Flawless, which was book number 1, and then Powerless, which is book number 3. I found this book to be just a little bit more frustrating in the plot and in the romance. I find romances, they're a little hit or miss on whether they're making me like squeal and kick my feet, or they're making me kind of cringe. And this one, unfortunately, I found myself having some more cringy moments with it, so I didn't love that. But all of Elsie Silver's books are really easy to read. I will be continuing the series for sure. So I have Reckless bought already, so I will be reading that next. And then Hopeless is the last installment in this series. And then once I finish those, she does have another series centering around the brothers of this series that I would like to read as well. Sorry, it's not centering around the brothers of the series, but it's centering around the sister of the brothers, if that makes sense. It's part of the same universe. I would recommend this. I did land on a 3.5 stars for this, where I did enjoy it. It was a good book, was not my favorite out of all of them. I gave Heartless 5 stars when I read it, and I gave Flawless 4.5 stars. So it is sitting below that, but it is still a very, very, very good read. It's a small town romance. I think a lot of people really adore this series. So if you think that that's something that you would be into, definitely pick this up, give it a shot. Book number 6 that I read in the month of December is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. This is the second book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, or duology. I did this in my last video. I don't know if it's a series or duology. It's like some interconnected duologies. Right now it's just the 2 books and a novella. This one, it's another big book, really hefty book, just about 600 pages on this one as well. So it is massive, and it's a big book as well. So those 600 pages are tall, they're long, again, like pretty densely filled with material. It did take me a long time to read this one as well, but not as long as it took me to read Iron Flame by any means. This series really blew up earlier in the year. The first book is called The Serpent and the Wings of Night. People love that book, and I think the general consensus on this one is that people liked this book but didn't find it as good as the first book. Basically, this centers around our main character Aurea and her counterpart, her love interest, Rain, and they both live in this world. In the first book, they're kind of thrown into this Hunger Games type of situation where Aurea is human, fighting against all of these vampires. in this competition to win a wish at the end of the competition. And then we get into this book where, you know, the competition is done and now we are seeing where things go after that. I won't give any spoilers about this one, of course, so I can't get into too much detail. But I liked this one more than I liked The Serpent and the Wings of Night. This is my only 5-star read of the month. I was really pleasantly surprised because I anticipated that I wouldn't like it as much as the first book. But all in all, this was phenomenal. This was really good. And I think what I know about myself now is that I love romantasy. I love romantasy. It's my favorite genre. But what I find is that I really need a good plot in the romantasy. I need the politics as well. And then the romance is fantastic. But if the plot isn't and the politics aren't quite as there and the romance is more heavy, I don't quite like that as much. I think that's what I've decided, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. But this one definitely more politics heavy than the first book, whereas the first book, it was mainly just the competition was the main bit of the plot. This is now the actual politics of this world, now that Aureia is navigating this world. 5 stars, really thoroughly enjoyed this, would recommend this. This was actually in my top 10 books of 2023 video. If you didn't watch that, go check it out. But this was just so good. It was so good. Book number 7 that I read was The Push by Ashley Audrain. This book I've kind of seen around for a long time. I find this is one of the books that whenever you go into Value Village or any kind of a thrift store, I always see this book there, and it is pretty highly recommended as well. It's one of those thrillers that people tend to recommend if you're not into thrillers. It's psychological. I again like this book, didn't love this book. I find whenever children are a really heavy kind of part of the book, it's not something that I love. I don't love kids in books, and this centers around a creepy, deranged child. The plot of this is that we have our main character who is Blythe, and she's in this happy marriage with this really great guy, and they end up having a child. And even before the child is born and into the child's first years of life, Blythe does not connect to this child. She thinks that there is something off about this child. And then things develop, kind of getting worse. Things happen. You see everything kind of crumbling before you. You don't quite know what the truth is, whether we have an unreliable narrator or what quite is going on. So there were a lot of aspects about this book that I liked. It was really interesting how it was written, because it was almost written like a letter where all of the paragraphs and everything were talking to somebody, which is, I've never read a book like that before, and it took a little bit of adjusting to that style of writing, but once you got into it, it was kind of interesting how that played out. I think I gave this a 4 stars. Good book, would recommend it. Not my favorite book by any means. Haven't really thought about it since, but kept me hooked, kept me reading. The 8th and final book that I read in the month of December is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This is the same author that wrote Divine Rivals, so I was super excited going into this book because I loved Divine Rivals. I'm now reading the second Divine Rivals book that just came in the mail. So this book, I've saw some really good things about it. It has fantastic reviews on Goodreads, and on TikTok, I've only seen good things. So I thought I was going to absolutely adore this book. I didn't. This was no, it wouldn't be my least favorite book of the month because I think Scarred is probably a little bit lower, but this one's about a 2.5, 2.75. I read it. I never found myself really caring too much about what was happening, except maybe a little bit towards the end. Things got a little bit more interesting. It's very folky. There's lots of stories in it. It doesn't seem super high stakes. It's a fantasy, but it's not giving all the things that I like to see in fantasies when I read the book. This book, it mainly centers around 2 characters, which are Jack and Adara, who live in this enchanted isle. And in this world, we have different kind of spirits that manifest based off of different elements. They have the water spirits, and they have the earth spirits and the wind spirits, and they have magic in this world, and the spirits kind of toy with these people. Anyway, throughout this book, we find out that the isle itself is separated into two clans. There's the Eastern Clan and the Western Clan. They are not friends. They do not like each other. And we find out that on one side, they have young females that are going missing. So you're kind of trying to work out what is going on. You know, is it the spirits that are stealing these children? What is happening? Jack and Adara are kind of in the middle of this. And then there is a bit of a romance that happens as well. I wanted so desperately to love this book. I really, really did. But unfortunately, it did fall a little flat. I don't know if I'm going to continue this series or not. It might be something that someday, if I'm stuck on what to get, I might pick it up at the library or something like that. I don't think I will be buying the next book because of how disappointing this book was for me. However, I am reading the second Divine Rivals right now, and so far that is good. So then, because it is the end of the month, I just wanted to go through my reads. So as I mentioned, I am reading Divine Rivals currently. I am not very far into this book. I'm on page 32. This just came in the mail yesterday, and I was just finishing A River Enchanted, so I really rushed to finish that so that I could get into this book, because this is one of my most anticipated books of the entire year. And then on my Kindle, I am reading the first books in the Addicted series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This one I've been reading actually for quite a while. I kind of only pick it up when I'm out and about. It hasn't grabbed me yet. I know from what I've heard from people that this is kind of a bit of a slower book in the series, and then after that it just gets really, really phenomenal. So I just need to push through this. But you know, when you're in a series and you know it's going to get better and you just want to be at those books that are better, that's how I feel about this. But I know I need to get through this to get there. And it's been a slow go. I think I'm about maybe 30% of the way through. So that's it. Those are my 8 books that I read in the month of December. Like I said, kind of a very mid reading month this month. I had some really good books and I had some really kind of alright books. If you have any recommendations for me, please leave them in a comment below. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I'm so excited to have you here. If you have any recommendations, anything that you'd like to see in the future videos, please leave a comment below with that. Maybe comment your favorite read that you read in December as well. And I hope you guys have a really fantastic start to your January, and I will see you in the new year. Bye.